know, since 2006, there's been an annual forum convened in different parts of the world, and the IGF has evolved into sessional work as well. National, regional, and now we also refer to youth IGF initiatives have a very different history. They emerged in a very organic way. They didn't come, they're not the outcome of a negotiation between states or between even at a multi-stakeholder level. And I think for me, how I understand NRIs and why I think they're so incredibly valuable is that they're organic. They emerged from the ground up. They are an expression of people's need to come together at a local level or a regional level or a national level, however you want to define it. But a need that people from different stakeholders have to come together to build more open and inclusive internet policy discussion, to learn together, to identify problems together, and I think most importantly, and this is why NRIs are so powerful often, to develop solutions together and to make that leap from dialogue and debate to implementation. And that's why NRIs, I think, are, and I think many people agree, many analysts agree, that NRIs are in fact the magic, the glue, that is giving the IGF sustainable impact. So I won't say very much more about NRIs because I can see so many of you are here who do know about NRIs. You are part of NRIs, you are the NRIs. But I also want those people on the call that are not familiar with NRIs or who have any questions about NRIs to please feel free to ask. This is a public discussion. It's being convened by myself as the chair and in collaboration with the Secretariat and also with the working group of the, but we really want everyone to use this opportunity to learn together and to share and to ask questions. The reason why this is a good moment for us to do this, there are two primary reasons. The one is that the IGF is now midway through its renewed mandate. So the first mandate was granted in 2005, then at the WSIS +10 meeting in 2015 in New York, member states of the United Nations extended, the General Assembly extended the mandate of the IGF for another 10 years, which would take us up to 2025. So we are halfway through that mandate. And therefore, I think it's a very good opportunity for us as a community to reflect on our practice, to reflect on what we do well, but also to reflect on what we can do better. Secondly, as most of you will be aware, there's a new process, a linked process that started just a few years ago, and that's the process on digital cooperation. It started with the UN General Secretary General convening a panel known as the High-Level Panel on Digital Cooperation. That panel issued a report last year, and since then that report has been distilled into a very accessible and not very long document called the Roadmap for Digital Cooperation. And this roadmap covers an area that is beyond the IGF. It includes the IGF's mandate, but it also covers a broader area. But it's very integral to the IGF in many respects, because for us as the IGF, cooperation around internet governance and internet development has been at the core of our vision and at the core of our activity. And therefore, it's a good opportunity for us as an IGF community, and that includes the NRIs, to reflect on where we sit within this process of digital cooperation, how we can contribute to it, and how we can benefit from it. And that's really at the root of this discussion. So those two issues, reflecting in the context of the mandate of the IGF, learning and from practice and thinking about how we can become better and more effective. And then secondly, reflecting on where NRIs in particular sit and in this opportunity, in this context of the
I think we've lost Henriette for a few seconds. So while we're waiting for Henriette to come back, can I just quickly confirm that you can at least hear me in the chat? Just to understand that it's not on my side only.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, thank you, Vafa. So Henriette did say that she is in a remote area, so these occasional cuts can happen, but I'm sure that Henriette will come back. In any case, what you've heard at the beginning is actually a very good explanation of the reasoning for convening this dialogue. So this dialogue would be convened for those that are familiar and involved in the NRI's processes to reflect on what's been done so far when we are now looking back through the first 5 years of the renewed mandate of the IGF and looking at the next 5 years, what we can do. With us today, there are a couple of NRI colleagues that probably know the best the NRIs from their very beginnings, from the very idea of the concept of the NRIs that emerged completely organic and developed into a very powerful network of currently 131 officially recognized national, regional, and youth IGFs. So because of that, I would like to invite a couple of colleagues to share with us their reflections, maybe starting as early as in early 2000s, in early 2006, when we had the first sub-regional IGF, which was the Caribbean IGF, that even predates the IGF with the annual meetings, that hosted its meeting just to reflect on these past 15 years, on the journey that all the NRIs were traveling and where we are today. A couple of colleagues signed up to speak in our preparatory process prior to this dialogue. So maybe I would invite Marilyn if she is online. Ms. Marilyn Cade from the IGF USA, but also the IGF Support Association and former MAG member that was tasked to facilitate the collective work of the NRIs at a certain point by at that time chairing the MAG chair. Ambassador Cartlidge. So, Marilyn, if you are there, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Anya, and greetings to all of you. It's really great to have the opportunity to speak for just a bit. I would just wanted to say one thing about even how we got to having a forum, which might be a bit of an elaboration on what you said, Henriette, because I well remember that we, in the WSIS preparatory process, and there are a few of you who were heavily involved in that. I see Marcus and a few others. In the early days, we were, stakeholders were not allowed in the rooms during the first 2 years unless we were there as a part of a delegation. But in the last 2 years, increasingly, and that was when Janis Karklans was the president of the preparatory process, increasingly it became very clear that it was going to be important to have stakeholders contributing. And that led, I think, to action on the part of stakeholders in several places. The Caribbean IGF was, I believe, the most formal at that time. In the US, we did not launch the IGF USA until 2009, but from 2006 forward, so for 3 years, we held 3 preparatory sessions a year of about 4 to 5 hours, preparing for each MAG meeting, trying to create awareness, trying to build a commitment and understanding of what internet governance is. And we were not alone in that. And I think that's one of the seeds, if you will, to what has led to the emergence and the uniqueness of the NRIs, where in some cases they were preparation and engagement with their government representatives. In other cases, they were engagement with other stakeholders. But the uniqueness of the NRIs and the independence of the NRIs has, to me, been one of the most unique characteristics, and one that is really important to maintain as we go forward. Excuse me, because it means that at the national level or the subnational level, sorry, we are able to reflect from the global IGF back into the national IGF, and from the national IGFs reflect into the global IGF. So independence, yet linkage, I think is very, very critical. And understanding uniqueness, how each of the IGFs at the national IGFs must be very unique in order to meet the interest of their community. I think sometimes, and I don't mean this as a criticism, but I see when new MAG members come in and they aren't involved in their national IGF, and they look at the NRIs as a vehicle, so to speak, a tool, a resource to do something specific. I think that is a vulnerability that we must be very careful about. And we must also be very careful that consultants who have a particular focus, or entities that have a particular focus, don't begin to think that they should be guiding the work or influencing the work. We have to be sensitive, as we have been to today, to how the NRIs are recognized and how they can contribute. But I'm just going to give one example, because I saw the idea that we would ask NRIs to do surveys. And I have to say, even in the, and the co-chair of IGF USA, Melinda Klim, is on the call, and I'm sure will speak. But I will just say that my experience in working with some of the national IGFs, the idea that we're going to load them up with, in addition to everything else they're doing, explain a topic, send out a survey, collate the survey, analyze the survey. I think we have to be, we have to step back and say, perhaps that's not what we should be doing from the MAG level, but instead we should be thinking about how we increase resources that can be supportive to the NRIs, to allow them to develop more organic activities that suit their community and increase the visibility. I just want to say one other thing that I'd like to talk about later, Anya and Henriette, and you can tell me when you'd like me to do that. I have some concrete ideas on how to further strengthen the linkage with the NRIs from the UN family and from other entities in providing international speakers. And I'd like to come back and talk about that at a later time when it's appropriate.
Thanks very much, Marilyn, and we will come back to that later. So next we will have Anya just give us a slide, just to give us a sense of what Marilyn has just talked about, the process of NRIs growing and developing, and Anya will just give us an overview of what the status is at the moment, how many NRIs there are, and more or less where they are. And then we'll go into a dynamic Q&A with our little panel of NRI veterans who are on the call with us. And after that, we'll go into an open discussion. And then towards the end, we will come back to the future. And Marilyn, that would be when your reflections on how we can strengthen the linkages, how we can connect NRIs to the digital roadmap, cooperation roadmap, and so on. And we can come back to that. So Anya, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Henriette, and thank you, Marilyn, for a very good recap of what's not easy to summarize at all, because there's been a lot of activities in the past 14, 15 years, and probably even beyond that, because you recall the VISIS process as well. But just to build on what Marilyn said, indeed, everything started, and you know that much better than me. I just know thanks to your testimonials and what's in the archives of the IGF Secretariat, which is that everything started through spontaneous gatherings, and that recognition by many communities in various countries and regions that one global forum is not enough for something that's very complex, such as the digital public policy. And over the years, that's been recognized, and good practices were followed by some of the NRIs. So today we have 90 countries which are successfully running the national IGFs. We have 19 regions and sub-regions as well, fully functional, 22 youth IGFs. And on the youth IGFs, what we've seen in the past 3-4 years is that probably there is the biggest potential for growth, but also for advancement of the existing processes. Many are integrated into the national and regional IGFs, and those as well deserve a special recognition. This time we are speaking to a couple of possible national IGFs to be recognized. In the coming days, for sure, the Madagascar IGF will be recognized, and the community will be informed with that. So technically, geographically speaking, you can see the map. The map looks very well, very geographically balanced, which is very important, because what we are seeing at the IGF Secretariat, and I'm sure you in your everyday work on internet governance, is that the complexity of the issues is deep, and that we don't share the same issues. We don't share the same conditions as well, either the resources. And that's why it's very important that we will work together through the NRIs for the IGF Secretariat, and I'm sure Henriette will agree also for the MAG. We have critical partners to understand what are the local specificities and how they are approaching their own local issues, and to learn from very good practices where changes are really visible, which are the local levels. Maybe, Henriette, I'll stop here for now, and then later I would like to say a few words about the NRI's collective organized work happening throughout the years of the IGF.
Thanks very much for that, Anya. So everyone, I'm now going to quickly just introduce our little as in panel, but in terms of resource people, there are lots of you on the call. So the people that we've asked to share some of their learnings with us today are Flavio Wagner, who's been active at the national IGF from Brazil, but also with the regional IGF and the global IGF, and has been a MAG member. Mary Oduma from Nigeria, currently a MAG member, who's also been very active in the African IGF as well as the Nigerian IGF and the West African IGF. Sandra Hoffenrechter, who's the Secretary General of the Eurodec, European IGF, which is known as the European Dialogue on Internet Governance, and Melinda Clem from the United States National IGF. So I'm going to ask a question, and I mean, you can just all come on screen. The one that speaks first can answer. But my question is really to you, to get us started, to the four of you. And Marilyn, you please are welcome to also add here. When you initiated your regional or national IGF, what was your vision? Did you have a vision? Just in a nutshell, what did you try to achieve? Who wants to start?
So, may I start here, Flavio?
Yes, go ahead, Flavio.
Thank you, Mariette. It's a pleasure to be with you and help in this discussion. So the Brazilian IGF started in 2011. So we are commemorating our 10th anniversary this year. We had the Brazilian IGF last week, virtual, as these times require, but successfully anyway, with a lot of activities during the whole week. And in the beginning, it was mostly what the IGF, also the global IGF, is meant to be, a space for multi-stakeholder dialogue. So we did not have this space in Brazil. Of course, we have the Brazil Internet Steering Committee since '95 as a governance entity, which is multi-stakeholder in nature from the beginning. But it is, of course, a limited space for dialogue of the whole community. So it was missing something. And then the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee decided to create this space for dialogue with the whole community. And it's interesting that you mentioned that the many NRIs, they grew organically, and each one certainly has a little bit different story of how it came about. And in the case of Brazil, we had this possibility of already having the Brazilian Internet Steering Committee, which is already a multi-stakeholder governance body for the internet. And so it was maybe for us much easier to start from a multi-stakeholder body and create a multi-stakeholder dialogue space, which is the Brazilian IGF. And so it was mostly an opportunity for the community to come together and have a space for discussing the current issues and prepare motions and debate and so on. So it was mostly that. And the same in the LAC IGF, the Latin American and Caribbean IGF. It's also a very already old initiative, and which is also multi-stakeholder in nature from the beginning. It is also a space for dialogue. And in both cases, we did not have, it was mostly a space for dialogue. We did not try to make recommendations, or of course we tried to get the policymakers to be together in this initiatives, but not in the meaning that we were trying to recommend things. We have the same struggles that the global IGF has regarding whether we can advance and maybe become something more than just a space for dialogue. So this is my first thoughts. I have some ideas for the future, but I can share them later on.
We'll come to those. So Sandra, Mary, Melinda, and everyone else who's here. Who else did I have in this? Just check. I've got here. Yes, Sandra, Mary, and Melinda and Marilyn. And do you have anything to add? Anything different? And maybe when you respond to that, do you feel that your vision has changed? Your rationale for convening your national and regional IGF, from when you started to now, has it changed in any way?
Hello, can I speak? Can I speak?
Yes, Mary.
This is Mary.
Yes.
Okay,
Mary.
thank you very much. This is Mary Uduma from Nigeria, as you have already said. And mine was out of patriotism. I was part of the WISIS. And after the WISIS, during the WISIS 2005, I was in the government, and I attended on behalf of the government of Nigeria, and I participated. And all the negotiations, all the midnight work with Marilyn and others, we were part of it. And then the issue of IGF came up through the WISIS, and we negotiated the IGF. And also, and you can see that the WISIS document 2005 also talked about the national or regional activities, because it was not spelled out. But we're told that nations can also start dialogue on internet-related issues. And we came back to Nigeria. When we came back, we tried to establish a steer-calm that would take the issues further from what we got globally. So in 2018, still in the government, from government interministerial meeting, we did a stakeholder meeting on IG issues, and it was just once and for all. But I keep attending the Internet Governance Forum, or fora, that happened in 2009, 2010, 2011, and it dawned on me that we need to bring home these things, the discussion, the debate, the dialogue that we have witnessed globally, and we can bring it home to the national, to the local, so that we can look at the issues that are pertinent to us. So let's just be discussing on issues that are of benefit to us and Nigerians when it comes to IG issues, internet governance issues, internet development, digital public policy issues, digital policy discussions. Now it's digital policies. It's not more basically internet public policy issues. So when I kept getting this, it kept prompting in my spirit that we need to establish that dialogue at our national level. And I had the advantage of having been in government, and I was retiring. I was retiring from government in 2012. So I thought about it and said, I must do something. All these participation, all these things that I've acquired, all this knowledge, it shouldn't die. So we should continue the dialogue. I should bring my people together to be able to dialogue and see where we fit in, and let our voices also be heard at global level. So that was my vision. And that was what prompted me to start convening the Internet Governance Forum in 2012 in Nigeria. And I didn't do it alone. I called for partners from the government, from civil society, from technical community, because I was the president of Nigeria Internet Registration Association then. I was the president, so we are the managers of the .ng. So I had advantage as well to be able to know what is going on. How are my people not participating? Why are we not effective? So that is how I started. And up till now, that vision has not changed. The vision has not changed. Yes, the vision is still the same. And I'm still pushing on that we should dialogue over IG related issues that have got to do with Nigeria, and and share with other people. And when we go out there and have best practices, we bring it home and apply that. The only thing we have not done is that we have not been tracking to know the effects, good effects, well, policy effects. So it's still something that is outstanding. Thank you very much.
I think I think Mary, just to intervene at that point, I think that's a challenge for the IGF as a whole. I think the strength of the IGF process, the NRIs, as well as the global IGF, is that it is very, very, it's based on a lot of voluntary input. It's very self-organized. But that also does mean we sometimes don't document or track our work adequately. But quickly, Melinda and Sandra, do you have anything to add on this issue of vision? And do you feel that, Sandra, I note your hand, and do you feel that sometimes there's the fact that there are these founders? Do we have founders syndrome in IGFs? The fact that we have these individuals who were so pioneering and powerful, has that actually been a benefit as well as perhaps a challenge? Sandra.
Thank you, Henriette, and hello to everyone. Henriette, basically you hit the nail in terms of, is it a benefit or is it a challenge to have the founders? I personally think it's a huge benefit, but of course we hear people telling us we have the same old talking heads since many years, but I would actually say we can be glad that we have this pioneer still around. And I would also like to note that all national and regional IGFs, as well as the global IGF, have been very successful in involving new people, may they be from the youth sector or other sectors. And it's definitely not the case that it's a disadvantage that we have the older people still with us. I mean, they are the pioneers. They have been experienced our world without the internet and have built it basically. As for the Eurodic, we've been founded in 2008, and it was right after the first wave of enthusiasm of the WSIS process and its outcomes. And the founding table was basically a little cafe in Paris during the ICANN meeting in 2008. And only 3 or 4 months later, the first European dialogue on internet governance was taking place. At that time, it was organized by the Council of Europe because they had the capacity to do the first step. And as I said, it was a lot of enthusiasm of many people from academia, from governments, from non-governmental or intergovernmental institutions, but also from the business sector and from the technical community. Many of those people later on became founding members in 2012 when we framed Eurodic in an association. So they are still officially with us as members, as founding members, and many of them still deliver their input, which I think it's great. At that time, it was important that we have a pan-European forum. You might be aware that European Union is not Europe. We have a lot of more countries in Europe, and beyond the European Union, we have also a lot of more diversity in terms of different language scripts and all these kind of things that make Europe a pretty diverse region. And it was clear that a European dialogue must be inclusive for all countries that belong to the continent of Europe, wherever these borders are. I know there are differences between the organizations. This was important, albeit it must be noted at that time also the European Union had plans to form a forum, an IGF, but basically Eurodic was a bit faster at that time. And it's also notable that in some nations in Europe at that time, national IGF started already. I remember Italy was very early. I think they've even been before Eurodic or at the same time. Also, France was a very early adopter of the IGF concept. In terms of outcomes, I don't want to go too far because I'm sure we're touching upon this later, but one thing I would like to note, and I would also like to share an overview with you in the chat, because one thing that is unique for Eurodic and that has meanwhile adopted by many other IGFs and latestly in 2017 also by the global IGF is the concept of messages. This is how from the start, Eurodic tried to summarize the outcomes, of course, the non-negotiated outcomes, but still sort of an outcome. And I think the concept of messages overall worked quite well. Of course, we see that they must become a little bit more relevant. They must be taken more into account by key deciders, may they be in the business sector or in the governmental sector. But this is the work for the years ahead. And I think in general, Eurodic has contributed to the overall development of IGFs with the concept of messages, because I know that many adopted this kind of soft outcome. I stop here.
Yeah, in fact, at the African IGF, which I've been part of organizing since the first one, we have recommendations. We've actually never, and I think that's one of the strengths of the NRIs. They don't have the same constraints that we might have at the global event. So in Africa, there's never been any question. No one has ever questioned whether the African IGF should produce recommendations or not. As for whether they are implemented, that's another story. Melinda.
Thank you, Henriette. I will not attempt to talk about the founding history of IGF USA when one of the founders was on and can do so much better justice. So what I'll share is a perspective of a technology company who was involved in several NRIs and participated from the beginning in them, because I think that offers a slightly different perspective. I would say that, you know, the reasons that we're involved align with the visions of the NRIs, that it gives us the opportunity, you know, we're I work for Affiliates, we're a multinational company, and we have business in several countries. But we realize that, you know, it's not just a matter of where data might reside or people and employees might be sitting in offices. That, you know, there's some broader aspects of providing a service that's not just the nuts and bolts of a statement of work or tech specs. And we get that through the NRIs. We can get that sort of, you know, the cultural aspect, the regional drives, the, you know, independent, you know, strategies put together either on a state or national level. And it's a great forum for us to bring, you know, to participate and to get that from multiple stakeholders at once. And, you know, that part of the vision and that early founding is why Affiliates got involved and why Affiliates stays involved and expands our roles in NRIs.
I think that's such a good example of how making that choice as an institution to commit to being part of NRIs over time has enormous benefit. But just another question before we open up to all the other participants. In the last few years, there's been much more talk about strengthening the linkages between the global IGF and NRIs. And there's been various modalities developed to achieve that. Do you feel, as people that are you know, are actively involved in organizing NRIs, has that pressure been constructive for you? Has it sometimes felt a little bit contrived, maybe a bit artificial, or has it been helpful to have to try and connect your NRI to the global IGF? And maybe also, Melinda, if you can talk particularly about the debriefs, because I think one of the innovations that I've seen with the US IGF is that you convene an event post the global IGF. But maybe just if you could reflect on that, whether you think, are we flogging a dead horse? Is it important to stress that linkage between the global event and NRIs, or should NRIs have more freedom to evolve their agendas and their activities and their process for producing outcomes without the constraint of the global IGF? Just what are your views in a nutshell? Be brief. Let's start with you, Flavio.
Yeah, I was muted. Yes, you see, this puts a little bit of pressure on us. Of course, Brazil is already a large country with a lot of problems and issues. And so we had a full agenda from us already to cover during our national IGF. But we always felt that pressure that we should strive to be more connected to the global IGF and to the Latin American Caribbean IGF. And we must admit that we did not manage really to build that connection because of many reasons. That it's difficult because of timing, because every new IGF cycle, the MAG decides on the main themes and on the tracks. We have these tracks in the last years, and then it is really a little bit difficult to us in Brazil to try to build a program for the national IGF that really connects to the main discussions that we have overall in the global IGF. It is a pressure. We did not come yet to a good solution, but we think it's a good pressure. It's nice that we have this constant push that we try to better connect to the global IGF. We would also like to produce messages and content from our local IGF that could be better reflected in the overall program of the global IGF. This is also a problem. So this is in both directions, this struggle to create better connections. We must say we do not have the best solution yet. So it's a constant struggle that we are also trying to cope with. Yeah, next one.
I'll jump in. This is Melinda. Short answer, yes. I think there should be a connection. If I had to, assign some sort of number value on it, I think the NRI should probably spend 80% of their time on local and regional issues. But I would definitely like to see, some common themes that we can talk to and report on and share our experiences at the global IGF. I think that those could come in two forms. One, themes on, as identified, defined themes for that year. And secondly, potentially, maybe just around specific SDGs and certain efforts that, individually we might be working.
This is Mary. Can I speak? Anya, can I speak?
Yes, Mary, I think Henriette will agree.
All right. The truth is that we were finding it difficult when we started to reconcile the fact that we are not linked to the global IGF. And I kept asking this question. I asked Marilyn, I asked Shangatai, how would the linkage be? Because we were discovering that representatives from Nigeria who are MAG members at the global level do not have relationship with us at the local level. So the linkage was not there. So we were not understand, because we coming in African country in particular, we are government prone when it comes to activities, when it comes to ICT, when it comes to telecoms. So we're trying to understand why we should not, the linkages will not be that we develop some issues and the messages and feed it into our regional, sub-regional, and then it will be fed into global level. We were made to understand that no, the regional and the national level, they are standing alone, they will stand alone on their own. It was difficult. Up to now, it's still a big pressure. In Africa, we are looking at making sure that our national IGFs, at the regional, sub-regional level will hold and come up with messages that will feed into the sub-regional level. The sub-regional level will feed into the African continent level of Africa IGF. It's still some of the things that it's still some of the ideas that we are still nursing in Africa. The pressure is on us. And when we go to the global level, we stand on our own. Alone is Africa IGF is not speaking for the whole of Africa. Each of us on our own at national level. So it's still a pressure. We don't know how we are going to solve it, but we are happy that things is happening now to make it easier for us to understand the linkages. And if it's linked, then it makes it better. Legitimacy comes stronger when it comes to the output of IGF for us to bring it back to our localities and then give to our stakeholders at our local level. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Henriette, are you still with us? Because we cannot hear you. I don't, maybe while waiting for Henriette to come back, I believe Sandra has a raised hand. So Sandra, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Anya. And I fully agree with what Melinda and Mary Flavio already said. I just want to add from my personal perspective that the network of the NRIs, and each year they emerged, actually made it more interesting for me to attend the global IGF or to contribute to the global IGF, because one of the big benefits is that you better understand how things are working or not working in other regions of the world. How different are these regions from the region you are familiar with? And I think to get a better understanding for other regions, other stakeholders, etc., is one of the biggest achievements of the IGF as such, and of course for every national and regional IGF. And I really feel that the network of the NRIs is a very valuable thing. Of course, sometimes decision-taking processes are a little bit slow, but I mean, we are a loose network. We do not operate after certain rules. We have a very low threshold of getting into this network, and we are very huge and very diverse. And I think it's all effort worth to continue with this network. And I said it on many occasions already, since we have Anya giving us a little bit of coordination, that was really a huge step forward, so that we can be a little bit more organized and find together a little bit more easily. For me, that was a big and still is a big benefit, and I hope we will continue to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. There are a couple of colleagues that have raised their hands. I actually wanted to add an important comment to everything that you said, which was extremely important. But I think the best is to hear from our dear colleagues, Wisdom from Ghana IGF, and after that, Abdel Jalil from the Chad IGF. Wisdom, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anja. My name is Wisdom, for the record. Yes, I just want to add on what Marilyn was saying. When it comes to the internet as a whole within Africa, there are certain things that I think we need to be looking at. If we say national, regional IGF, what is the benefit to the nations of Africa? We need to understand that very well. And then in my perspective, I'm thinking that if you are saying my national IGF, Ghana, for example, and we are doing all that we are doing to promote the internet stability and all that, but then we keep on forgetting that we have other stakeholders. Example, the agri sector is there, the health sector. These are the areas that leverage on internet and digital services to do their work to help humanity and all that. So how do we measure internet in this context? Measuring the internet within this context, or knowing the benefit of internet within this context, we need to begin to involve these sectors on the things of what the internet. That is the only way I think we can be making some impact within the developing countries. To me, it's just like every year we meet, we discuss about, we come up with a nice topic, we do all the discussions, and then that is it. We don't try to bring in those various or critical sectors into it. In our country, that is what we've been doing, try to align what we do with the various sectors. Another thing that I'm seeing coming up with individuals trying to also come up with their various internet governance initiatives. And then these initiatives are trying to kind of override what the national IGF is doing. We have a similar situation in Ghana this year where someone registered his own initiative and then trying to use this initiative to raise funding. And then to the extent that all the our national IGF, all their stakeholders who kind of contribute to the national IGF within Ghana, these guys contacted them for funding. And then the question they asked them, are they part of the national IGF? They keep saying yes. And then they have to call us, and then we confirm to them that they are not part of them. We don't recognize them. And also, it looks like there is no any guiding principle that is guiding them. So we also need to look at that. If it is Internet Governance Caucus that these guys are registering with, we need to, look at it critically and see how we can address this so that nobody steps on anybody's toes. So, Anja, this is what I have to say.
Thank you very much, Wisdom. You are underlying very important facts. That is true. And as you know, the IGF Secretariat is as well receiving a lot of calls and emails asking about the status of the NRIs. I think that's also very important that we do the due diligence all on our side in terms of the NRIs to report on their processes, the Secretariat to update the website, because that is the record that many are following. But before we reflect on excellent comments that were given by previous speakers, including Wisdom, further, can we give floor now to Abdel Dialil from the Chad IGF? I see Roberto as well in the queue from the Bolivian IGF and LAC IGF, and then I think Andriette is back with us, so we're just gonna go back to Andriette. Abdel Dialil.
Thank you so much, Anya, and all the colleagues. It's Abdel Bashar Bong from IGF Chat. So I think that's very important few points that is comment by Mary. So the link between national, regional, regional IGF, I think that will be very key for us, because in some regional, so we held the IGF without before holding the national IGF. So if we have the national IGF, we need to bring this outcome of national IGF to bring to the sub-regional. And the sub-regional discussions, so we need to bring to continental level in African IGF. And after that, we can bring this on African continental agenda or outcome to the international global IGF. So I think that that's the gap here. So that's the gap. So we need to close this gap. And also we need to do some strategic planning of NRI's general annual meeting. So for example, for Chad, you can say that for two years, we need to have this. And for sub-regional also. So we need to work together for the sub-regional, from national and African level before going to international level, because there's some gap also. And we need to have not only discussing the annual meetings, but we need to bring new idea or new initiative like training, internal governance courses, and new idea. We need to bring idea. So we cannot wait only for annual meeting and we appeal for 1 year, after that we disappear. So that's a gap also. And how the African outcome of IGF can impact our local, because some people ask me, you travel in IGF, international IGF. So how that outcome can impact me as individual. So that's a big issue that we need to answer this question and to work together and to go forward. So I need to stop there. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Abdel. Very important. Andrea, if you agree to hear from Roberto, our MAG member and coordinator for the Bolivian IGF, also active with the LAC IGF. Roberto, I believe we agree. You have the floor. We cannot hear you, Roberto, still, but let's just give it a few seconds to see whether...
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you. Yes.
Now, oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Anja. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I just wanted to tell very quickly my involvement history about this regional, national, and of course, the global IGF. I started on 2017 going to Panama, Latin American IGF as part of the different activities we were developing in ISOC. And just in that very first time that we went, because we went with 2 or 3 members of the board of our ISOP chapter in Bolivia, we realized that yes, there were a really strong lack of linkages between the regional IGF, like IGF, to the different national IGFs we have in Latin America and Caribbean. And that was something that was observed and that needed to be overcome in the future. Of course, when after that, 1 year after that, we confirmed the same thing in Argentina, the LAC IGF in 2018. And then we tried to overcome that, trying to give some support from our country. Actually, we proposed it and we accepted to be the host of our local IGF in Bolivia in 2018. But even then, we couldn't manage to get and to work more actively preparing the program. And the reason was that only just a group of colleagues were in charge of that situation. It wasn't by that time a very participative process, and that's something that we also observe. And the good thing is that like IGF assigned this task to our very dear colleague that we all know, which is Raúl Echeverría, to evaluate the process of our LAC IGF. And yes, he also found, coming with all the inputs that the region provide him, all the peoples in the region provide him, he found that kind of facts and also some others in order to strengthen, in order to get a better LAC IGF in our region. What I want to say about this is that these facts that you were mentioning, many of you were mentioning, are really true. I think we are very similar in our process, and I also found that it's really difficult for us to get together as different national IGFs and national initiatives in order to share expertise, in order to share or exchange some experiences, because the natural place that should be the place for this kind of exchange is the regional IGF. And I hope that's going to change in the future. Then the other thing that I was involved in, and I think it's a really good place to do this, is of course the network that we have led by Anja. And I think that's something that we need to strengthen again, providing more platforms for exchange. Anja knows that I'm always mentioning that kind of thing, and to have this kind of platform. And I think this is a good place because we have a space to have this change right now. We prepare the different programs for the work that we are doing as NRIs, and we have, of course, the main session also. But perhaps we need to go a little bit further, and that could be something that could provide more linkages for the global IGF too. That's all. Thank you, Anja.
Roberto, thank you very much. And I do agree, there will be an opportunity for, as you know, all NRIs in an organized manner toward the end of this IGF cycle to reflect on what's been done so far and to see what needs to be done in the coming period. I know Roberto is advocating a lot for the concepts that he has shared, and he's not alone. Many NRI colleagues do agree. So we will see what direction our strategy will take from 2000 and from the 16th, let's say, 16th IGF cycle and onwards. Andriette, I think, is back with us. Andriette, if you would like to take the floor, it could be that you also want to go with the third section of this panel. Just wait a little bit. If not, then there is, while waiting for Andriette, there is an important comment that I wanted to add at the very beginning when we started speaking about the collective work of the NRIs, is that I cannot agree more that there is a lot of pressure, what Flavio mentioned. I think there's a lot of pressure of responsibility on the NRI coordinators, and that needs to be recognized. So those are usually one or two persons that are taking the not at all easy role of being a liaison between the IGF Secretariat and their organizing committees of their NRIs, but also with other NRIs. In addition to the fact that there is a very good collaboration with the NRIs and the IGF Secretariat between all the NRIs, but focused mostly on the objectives of their participation in the annual IGF meeting. I'm very, very happy and pleased that I can see that also completely organically, there are many NRIs to NRIs collaborative efforts that are emerging more and more. Just recently, there was a very good, actually very impressive advocacy days that were hosted jointly by the Ghana Youth IGF and the Indian Youth IGF. I was invited there to take participation and spoke to many colleagues. And I think, I'm sorry that I don't think we have our colleagues Hita and Lily on this call to just speak about how that collaboration emerged and in what it resulted. What I've seen was very impressive. A lot of young people exchanging good practices and concerns on the topics and hearing completely different inputs coming from those two communities. So that's one of the examples that I wanted to share. Just a few days ago, I also spoke, emailing with Melinda that just spoke saying that she is also preparing for the Australian IGF. So that kind of a cooperation as well is important between the NRIs, and I can see that it's emerging more and more. But also just one important point while we are waiting for Andrea to come back is the fact that what I said at the beginning, there's a lot of pressure on the NRI coordinators, pressure of responsibility, delivering to the NRIs for their preparatory process and integration into annual IGF meeting is not at all easy. It is not just showing once or twice on a 1 or 2 hours meeting. It really means running a bottom-up inclusive process within the community and agreeing with the organizing committee to communicate the input back to the network, and then bringing all that on a second level where the network needs to agree and achieve the consensus, which sometimes I agree is not easy. But for me, it was always impressive to see how the healthy network of that's so large and achieves consensus in a relatively rapid pace. And finally, for the IGF Secretariat, which is fundamental, and I'm glad Changita is on the call, he can confirm. For us, it's fundamental and essential that everything that the NRIs are doing jointly under the facilitation of the IGF Secretariat is actually done in a bottom-up manner, following the request and the need from the NRIs. So not imposing anything or giving any ideas that are not emerging from the need of the NRIs itself, and in addition to respecting the independency and the autonomy of all the NRIs. With that, if there are, I'm just going to check quickly the chat, if there are any other comments that would like to, from the NRIs, I would like to take the floor. I do see that it's over an hour, so. Yes, I do see some excellent comments in the chat, and I would like to draw your attention to it. While waiting for Henriette, I know that Henriette wanted to move to a second stage for the NRIs to reflect on the ways forward. Primarily, what do you see as the NRI's future? And just to give a little bit of the direction, for the NRIs, as you know, the report of the high-level panel on digital cooperation gave a lot of space and elaboration to the concept of the NRIs, the importance of strengthening the linkages with the all recognized IGF initiatives. And more importantly, probably in that process of consultation and building on the report and what panel has concluded and recommended is the roadmap for digital cooperation that was issued by the Secretary General's office that also explicitly speaks about forging the linkages between the national, regional, and youth IGFs. So within that umbrella and understanding the mandate of the IGF, understanding your own capacity, the question would be in that context, how do you see the future of the NRIs and whether there is anything that the Secretariat could do more to elevate more the role of the NRIs individually and collectively. I think Marilyn said that she would like to, at the very beginning, she would like to come in on this specific point later at the time. So I think, Marilyn, this is the agenda item where your inputs would fit perfectly.
Thank you, Anya. I have spent an incredible amount of my professional career working with trade associations, not just in the US, but in other countries through WITSA that has a presence in 80 countries, with the UN family, agencies, and I think, and I observed their engagement during the WISLIS process. And subsequently, there were times that I'm sure Changatai may be able to comment on further, when we organized briefings in Geneva for first secretaries of embassies, when we tried to advance further engagement of entities such as the UN Commission on Science and Technology for Development, UNCTAD, WIPO, ITU, UNESCO, etc. Most of those UN agencies have regional offices, and yet we have a very big challenge in getting international speakers, any kind of response from those agencies to provide speakers to the national and sub-regional IGFs. We have challenges in getting speakers from corporations, many of whom are US based or European based, who do business in other regions, but they're not really aware of the importance of providing speakers and support and interaction to the national and sub-regional IGFs. And I think for myself, I'm very interested in how we might strengthen the visibility of the national IGFs and youth IGFs and the sub-regional IGFs in particular, where I see the opportunity for there being a broader dialogue. The second thing that I'm interested in is how we advance more engagement with one or two champion parliamentarians in each country. In the United States, we actually established long before the WISAs, an advisory committee of our legislators. We call them legislators, and we had well over 100 participants, elected members of Congress, bipartisan, part Republican, part Democrat, who were interested in internet issues. And we really, in the early days, we worked very, very hard to make sure that we had awareness by taking briefings to them, to educate them about the importance of what was going on in the WISAs, why it mattered, why the internet would be affected, and what positions we felt the US government should take. I know that many of us at a national level, it's just not that easy to reach parliamentarians in many countries, and I'm not suggesting that it can be done universally, but as there will be, or there is, something of a focus on inclusion of parliamentarians at the global IGF, I hope we might consider how the network of NRIs might be able to interact and then leverage any national relationships back at home in the home country, so to speak. But I think a challenge and outreach to the to champions within the UN family, and I think Wyman has been on the call, but I'm really talking about the UN family of specialized agencies who have programs, who have regional offices, and how we might advance stronger interest on their part. I just want to say something as well about not overlooking, and Wisdom, thank you for your comment, but not overlooking the importance of agriculture, healthcare. The estimates of the impact of lack of food on the world by the year 2050 is absolutely terrifying. And that makes a focus on agencies that are concerned about agriculture, about climate change, and other new issues. I think we need to be thinking about how we are looking at the national IGFs ourselves as leaders at the national and regional level, and thinking about how we can incorporate examination of such issues to make the national IGFs more stimulating, even if it's one main session on one of these topics. It may be the breakthrough and very visible activity. And I hope that we won't overlook the Commission on Science and Technology for Development, where the ministers of science and technology could be real champions. I saw Taylor's comment. I just want to make a comment. You know, Taylor, there have been times when I cringed when someone suggested having a member of Congress, because that meant you would have no control over your schedule in the event they didn't show up and you had to completely reorganize your entire day around when they could get away from a vote?
Yeah, I'm sure Taylor is smiling behind his camera. Marilyn, thank you very much. I think you've, I know that you were speaking also from the perspective of the IGF USA, but I do think that reflects not just to all the NRIs, but also to the global IGF. I mean, Sandra had direct experience with engagement of parliamentarians last year. She was involved with the host country, the German host country for the IGF for the IGF 2019, but also experience with the Eurodic, and I think it's worth of hearing it maybe at some point in this discussion, Sandra. But I do see that Flavio would like to speak. I see the hand, so perhaps now to give the floor to Flavio if Andrea agrees.
Yeah, thank you, Anya. So if we think forward on the evolving of the NRIs and the global IGF together, so we see that in many cases there have been things that have been done at the global IGF level and that then later on have been tried and implemented at national and regional level. So we see in Brazil, we had this experience that from 2017 on, we started having open calls for workshops from the community with a very good response from our Brazilian community, and then started to make a selection of workshops and make most of the program of the event based on workshops that were proposed by the community itself. We see now the LAC IGF starting, it will be an experiment that will start this year to have intersessional work, much in the way of the BPFs or dynamic coalition. So there will be thematic working groups working along the year. But we also see in the other direction, the things that worked well at the national or regional IGF. We have the example from the messages that have been mentioned just before that were then incorporated by the global IGF. So I think as we move forward and see the proposals that we have at the final report of the high-level panel on digital cooperation and things and proposals that are also reflected in the options paper, that many of those proposals maybe could be experimented at national and regional levels, that are new structures, new functions that have been proposed, the cooperation accelerator, the policy incubator, to have better links between discussion and decision-making bodies, to create sandboxes for developing, testing innovative approaches, for instance, for development of concrete recommendations. All those things, they may be implemented at national and regional level, maybe in an easier way than at the global IGF. So national and regional initiatives could try to experiment with those new structures, new functions, new ideas, and then best practices may be collected and then offered to the global IGF as lessons learned, so that we can later on start implementing those things also at global level. Or other way around, that the global IGF start experimenting these new possibilities that are offered by the high-level panel and by the options paper. And so we talk about the observatory and help desk functions, for instance. So it has been said already that maybe it's not worthwhile to implement something from scratch at global level. But there are many initiatives around, many national IGFs are maybe well connected to local initiatives that have these functions, that as observatories for internet governance policy matters or help desk functions. And they then maybe we can create together some bottom-up structure, bringing those good practices that we have at national and regional level and make this thing grow together at the global level. So I think it's worthwhile to think of possibilities of this cross fertilization of ideas in the both directions, and see which new proposals we have from the high-level panel and from the options paper, and then see whether it's worthwhile to start experimenting at the global level or national and regional level. Maybe there are NRIs that will like to offer to start experimenting those things and then reporting their best practices. So these ideas for the next future.
Thank you.
Flavio, it's Henriette here again. Thanks so much, Anya, for stepping in with my connection. And I think you probably will have to again. But I've been listening for the last few minutes. Flavio, if you could just say a little bit more about that. So what you seem to describe is quite an experimental approach. Do you think that's the best approach? Do you think there's a need for a more coordinated approach? If the NRIs are to become part of this IGF Plus ecosystem, what do you think is necessary to support that and sustain that? Do you like the idea of starting on a pilot basis or maybe in one region? So that's my one question, and I'm going to ask my other question as well so that you and others can respond. What we know from experience that governments have very different roles in national IGFs. Sometimes they are very supportive and they're very active participants. Sometimes they are very difficult to engage in a national IGF. And sometimes government is actually the convener of a national IGF. So there are very different relationships between a national IGF and governments. And what does that tell us about the NRIs becoming part of this digital cooperation architecture? Does it imply that NRIs need to change or consolidate their relationships with government, or does that not really matter? Sorry to give it back to you, Flavio. And maybe, when you're done, if the other participants, the speakers, but also other participants can make some concrete suggestions for how we can take this positioning of NRIs and utilizing the power of NRIs in the IGF Plus. So some more concrete suggestions, but back to you first, Flavio.
Yeah, thank you, Henriette. Yes, we are brainstorming together. So, but of course, as many have already said, the NRIs are very different from each other. So each one has its own history. And as you mentioned, maybe some of them have very good connections to local governments. In other cases, the government itself is the convener. In other cases, there are no good connections. This is a little bit the case in Brazil, for instance. We don't have many good experiences in really bringing the government to the dialogue. So this means that we should not force a one-fit-all solution, one-size-fits-all. So that's why I think NRIs should offer, depending on their particular situations, on their particular history, they should offer to pilot experiments regarding different mechanisms that are proposed by the high-level panel or by the options paper, or things that are being thought by the MEG and then that are maybe a little bit too difficult to start with at the global IGF from the beginning. So I would say, but coordination is of course necessary. I would say the IGF Secretariat and maybe some MAG members or maybe a small MAG task force should work together with NRIs that are willing to try to experiment with those new ideas that we are seeing there. So definitely coordination is good, and definitely each NRI knows its own history and knows which kind of experiment are possible and worthwhile to do at a local level. But it's just first ideas.
Thanks for that, Flavio. I'm giving back to Anya.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you very much, Henriette. I just wanted to thank as well Flavio for very good ideas to start off. But I think somebody, as you know, everything with the NRIs collectively working is bottom up. So we need to get an idea from the NRIs and an incentive, and then the Secretariat is more than happy to facilitate and follow your lead. Wisdom, I think you would like to take the floor. I see the hand.
Yes, thank you very much, Anja. Just wanted to respond to the question that Henriette just asked. What I want to say is that we have to be mindful of how we have to be mindful not to kind of give NRIs to government. NRIs should belong to the people, and then we have to do everything possible to make sure it works. What I think we can do is to either come out with a survey for every country to know the problems that arises from within our various nationals. I think with that, we should be able to get enough reasons to take certain decisions towards certain lines. I know government in itself, they have their problems already. They have so many issues they are trying to deal with. And then sometimes adding issues of NRI might be one of their headache. But then I think largely it should belong to the people. As we keep on saying, stakeholder, government is part, everybody is part. And then we should just try as much as possible to make it work. I remember last year IGF in Germany, the parliamentarians were there and then they saw what happened. In Ghana, for example, the MPs who attended that program now saw the need to kind of push the internet governance so that they can do what they are doing to help the country. And then they've, as far as taking it to parliament, they are educating themselves and all that. So we have to find innovative ways to see how this thing can work. Countries that are difficult, we can just strategize and see how we can help those countries. I think there are voluntary people around who would like to volunteer to help people who are facing difficulties and all that. But taking it away or making government one of the prime listing within internet governance, I think it will fail. So it has to belong to the people. Thank you.
Thanks for that wisdom. So, I mean, it sounds to me as if you know, reading between the lines of the conversation, that most of you seem to think that there's acceptance for the multi-stakeholder approach, that we've built from the bottom up within our NRIs legitimacy for this approach to internet governance, and that all stakeholder groups, including governments, accept that multi-stakeholder deliberation and participation is the right way to do internet policy discussion and development. Is that true or false? Do you know? And I ask anyone on the call to respond. Have we climbed that mountain, or are we still climbing that mountain towards acceptance of this approach? Abdel Jalil, I see you wanted to respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So for us and for IGF Chat experience, how we work closely with one of the key co-holders, so we can call the government. So we need to discuss with them every time, and we need to update them, because some people inside the Ministry of ICT, they don't have some updates. So we need to, for them, when talk about internal governance, they don't know internal governance. So in the beginning, so we send a letter to the minister. So the minister accepts us and he puts us in touch with the team. And after that, he designed a focal point in our national IGF. The focal point is like interference between us and the Minister of ICT. So since our creation of IGF in 2015, so the minister came to open officially the national IGF. So this kind of relationship that we have with them, and also we advise them, we give them some advice, and also for example African IGF. So we work on background, like one of the key examples, our African IGF. So when you see this opportunity, we want directly to the Minister of IT. This opportunity, so we need that Chad must be the host of this African IGF, the opportunity, because IGF is key. It's very key for us and for the community, for the African community. So when the minister says that, so why not go? So prepare us do the planning. So after that, we meet them with the other staff. We work closely together to prepare everything. So this is our contribution as national IGF to bring the African IGF on behalf of government of Chad. So the ministry is very, very, very happy on that. So the other thing is that how to bring them. For us, the most difficult is the UN, United Nations institution who is based in Chad, like UNFPA, like other institutions, how to bring them, because we send letters, that's no answer. So for them, it's very difficult to bring them in our initiative. And also like other stakeholders, like private sector, like Chamber of Commerce. Also for them, they don't understand interglobal. We send letters, that's no answer. So because we cannot do a national IGF without them. So we need to collaborate and we need to push them to come in the table and to discuss with them. So this is the approach for us, government is key to work together and to prepare them and to explain them slowly. So now we advise them, why not in the organizational ministerial charter, why not to put advisor of internet governance? So they say that why not? It's a good idea. So they took this idea also. And for example, for international governance for last year, so we have, they have participation of Canadian parliamentary, the president of ICC, of national parliamentary. He participated, and the other rapporteur, 2 persons for the national parliamentary, and also the advisor, ICT advisor of president of Chad. He also participates. So this kind of thing that the national IGF need to work closely with them and to bring this our stakeholder from national to international governance. So just I need to stop there.
It's really good to hear that, but I think we also need to think about the reality that there are many governments that participate in national IGFs that still shut down the internet. And I think this is in a sense, I think the importance of NRIs, that they are spaces where those conversations can continue, even if there is a lot of contestation at other levels. And I think sometimes it might seem quite futile to involve a government that shuts down the internet in a national IGF, but one can also look at that and say it's much better to still have conversation and to be talking about the challenge of shutdowns than to not talk about it at all. But let's move on to Sandra, and then we'll start bringing it to a close. But Sandra, you wanted to comment on this question of the multi-stakeholder mountain.
Yes, indeed. I do think, and I said it in the chat already, that we are still climbing that mountain. And I would just like to underline from my experience from last year's IGF in particular, where I was involved in bringing parliamentarians to the IGF. I do believe more than ever that these are the key participants that we should get. And every national and regional and the global IGF should put all efforts in reaching out more to parliamentarians, because they are, in a way, a multi-stakeholder body as well. Parliaments usually convene from different people of the society in each country. They are not per se governmental representatives. They are lawyers, they are academics, they are workers, doctors, whatsoever. And whatever the government is doing right or wrong, the parliaments usually are the places to take decisions and to bring everything in the right order. And those people are basically usual people. Normally they are usual people with not such a deep knowledge in the internet, how it functions. Sometimes they are, if they have a technical background. This also happened. For instance, the colleague from Ghana last year, he was such a technical guy, absolute brilliant understanding about how the internet works and how to bring the bits together. But we need those people to understand the importance of the governance of the internet. And if we have them participating in the national, regional, and global IGFs, then we can be sure that the messages are delivered to the country level and that it has an impact on making legislations. And we just had the German IGF and the German parliamentarians who were basically inviting, or who were the inviting body of all the other global parliamentarians. They just underlined that they have a big interest in continuing with a, whatever that might be called, parliamentarian stakeholder group or whatsoever, but that they have a strong interest in a little bit more coordinated approach of bringing parliamentarians to any of the future IGFs. And I really think that the NRIs can contribute a lot of resource here, because possibly everyone knows parliamentarians in your country, and you are the closest to them, and you possibly have their mobile numbers, or at least know how to find their email addresses and how to connect to them. And it's so important that you help the global IGF to do this, because what they say is it was so rewarding to talk to parliamentarians from other countries, just have an exchange on a very basic level, to get an understanding about the problems of other countries, to broaden the perspective how other countries are dealing with the issues, because every country has a different approach. They are really the key resource, and we should not, and in particular in this important phase where we talk about the IGF Plus model, we should put all our efforts in involving them as much as possible. And I know there's a parliamentarian roundtable taking place this year during the IGF. Yes. So let's help us to make this a success as well.
So let me ask you a follow-up question on that, because at the moment the parliamentarian track, the high-level track, which we want to develop, is being organized not by NRIs. Obviously, NRIs are providing support to it. But Sandra, are you perhaps saying that you'd like to see a more consolidated or formalized link between NRIs, parliamentarians at NRI level, parliamentarians at the global IGF level, and then again, parliamentarians at NRI level? Is that something perhaps that we can look at developing more continuity? With having the same people, maybe debriefing sessions, but connecting it so that the parliamentarians who attend the global IGF know that it's important for them to then participate in the NRI, and vice versa. So I don't have any very concrete idea, but it seems to me that at the moment those linkages are a little bit ad hoc rather than structured. Do you want to comment on that?
Henriette, I think that you have absolutely the right idea, and I can only speak from the European perspective now. We are trying since a while to bring together members of the European Parliament with NRI coordinators. You might remember that we had some of these receptions where I had to push away some of you people, which was really not something I liked to do, but it was a joint event between the European Internet Forum, which is the organization that hosts the European member of the European Parliament, and European NRI coordinators, because we believe those people are basically the one that can make the best linkage between the legislative, the decision-making level, and the discussion level that we have on any IGF-like initiative. The coordinators need to meet the parliamentarians, and if we have this year in a virtual space, or latest next year when we hopefully meet in person again, then we should possibly think about a gathering in particular for NRI coordinators and parliamentarians.
Yeah. Thanks, Sandra. So, Roberto and Wisdom, you have to be very quick because we are running out of time. So first you, Roberto, and then Wisdom.
Thank you very much, Henriette. I just want to mention that in our case, what I think is that, well, policy making about providing laws is more a long-term process. It needs more dialogue. Normally, there are different and a lot of things that the parliamentarians are discussing about, and there are still some other aspects like operational regulations that are provided by or are defined by the governments. I mean, the executive level of the governments, not the parliamentarians. And I think that in that case, we have more possibility, we have more chance to get some concrete outcomes. We had a chance, the good luck or the good approach or the good relation with the government, and we have in our last 3 events we had involvement of the government. We even have a minister in last meeting, and I think we do provide some reflection from them and get some outcomes. So I think we need to continue in that way. Not always wait for the parliamentarians to be involved. And the last thing I would like to also suggest is whenever we seen from the global IGF, we provide, like recently the Secretariat we're doing, provide invitations to our parliamentarians in our different countries. It could be great if we appoint, the Secretariat also appoint as local focal points the people that is involved in the NRIs. That could provide us a very strong linkages with them in order to follow up, in order to pursue their concrete participation in the IGF meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Roberto. Wisdom.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. I think we rather need to be looking at the African Union. I'm talking in the perspective of Africa. We should be looking in the perspective of the African Union and then the ECOWAS and see how these institutions can be part of the NRIs. I'm saying this because the African Union, for example, has adopted this internet governance. And I remember before in Ghana, before the previous government left office, I think there was a request from the IGF Secretariat to submit a report through the Minister of Communication. And I think that report went as far as to the presidency. So I think this was a request that I think a letter came from the African Union up to the ministerial level. So if we can look at that and see how we can streamline it so that African Union will be part of NRIs, and then that channel of information can flow through the African Union, and then it will get to our government. I think that will make the work more easier for everyone.
I think it's a very good point with them. I know from my own work with the African Union that they actually struggle to reach governments or to get a response from government. So I think if NRIs can also strengthen that relationship with regional bodies, very important. Well, we've come to a close to the discussion. So I'm going to ask Marilyn and Anya and Melinda and Sandra and Flavio and Mary Uduma, our panelists so far. If you can just say one thing you would like to see related to NRIs in the evolution of internet governance and the IGF Plus ecosystem. What is the one thing that you really want to see with regard to NRIs? If you want to rather mention something that you don't want to see, you are also welcome to do that. So Marilyn, I want to start with you. Just so very brief, one thing.
The one thing that I'm most interested in, I think, is the continued strengthening of the NRIs at the national level, with the ability to feed into the sub-regional and the regional. But by strengthening, I mean more resources, more visibility, more recognition of the importance of that, and more identity. And I think with that will come continued growth in the number. But the important thing is, I think it will also bring strengthened participation and the ability to make concrete recommendations.
Okay, so what your one thing is strengthening of NRIs at a national level, and then that will have all those spin-offs that you've mentioned. Flavio, what about you?
Just trying to unmute, sorry. I would say we have one of the main recommendations from the options paper, and a problem that we had always at the global IGF is the question of inclusivity. How can we bring together people from underrepresented communities, or even governments or private sector representatives that do not feel motivated enough to show up at the global IGF? Maybe the NRIs are the best means for including different sectors and people and communities into the global dialogue. And
Yeah.
they may
I think
feel more...
especially the ones that are not, sorry to interrupt you, but especially the ones that are not, that are impacted by the internet, but who don't see themselves as part of the existing internet community.
Yeah, and I think they may
But
feel
sorry to
more...
interrupt you, Flavio.
But it's a good
Yes.
observation, Henriette. Yes, of course. I think those stakeholders and so I'd say common citizens of the world, they may feel more comfortable in taking part in dialogues at the local level. It's they may have difficulties in taking part at global discussions where there are maybe people already involved with those issues for many years. So it's always a problem. So I think we need to strengthen the NRIs so that they bring more stakeholders and more citizens and more local actors to the dialogue, and find a way that the messages coming, recommendations, and the positions from the community at the bottom level, from all countries, from the NRIs, that these things really pop up at the global IGF, that now that we are trying, for instance, to improve the outcomes from the IGF and having a more structured way of documenting the conclusions from the many sessions and so on, that we can integrate in a much better way the contributions that come from the NRIs. I think this would be the best way to strengthen the NRIs and make them organic part of the global IGF.
Okay, so Marilyn's key point was recognition. Yours is inclusivity. Melinda, what about you?
What I'd like to see are opportunities for us to collaborate outside of the main session at the annual IGF. That's important, but it's once a year. I think we need to identify a way to organize around, themes, issues, SDGs, whatever it might be, but a way for us to share and collaborate throughout the year, maybe inviting one another to be a part of our own NRIs, would be one way to do it on topics that, we have similar topics and things of that nature. But for me, it's about, more of those opportunities and taking advantage of the entire year and not just the event in the fall.
Yeah. Actually, the Secretariat and the Dynamic Coalition and Best Practice Forum coordinators have also worked on a plan for how to connect NRIs more continuously to other IGF intersessional modalities. But that's a very important point. So Melinda, your key point is inter-NRI collaboration on an intersessional basis or something like that, just ongoing collaboration beyond the annual main session. And Mary, what is your one thing? Mary, are you still with us? I can see you. Perhaps while Mary unmutes or gets her thoughts together, what about you, Sandra? Anything in addition to the point about parliamentarians?
Yes, money. That's all we need. We need sustainable funding. We have the people, we have the enthusiasm, we have the skills, we have the network, and everything can be done if people are paid for what they are doing. And we must come away from this concept of this is voluntary work. This is going too far and this is going to be too important to do this on the long term on a voluntary basis. And I think last year's IGF, where Germany took a lot of money in a sense, showed quite good what you can achieve if you have sustainable funding. And possibly this goes along with the recognition that needs to come from the UN.
Yes, and I think your point is also particularly valid if one were to look at NRIs as being part of the architecture, the ongoing, longer term, stronger architecture for digital cooperation. Anya, what about you? What is your one thing? I'm sure you want many, but for you, what's the most?
Yeah, everything the colleagues said, that's everything that I want. So I would say more international visibility and more resources for the NRIs.
And Mary, are you able to join us? Are you able to speak? I don't see Mary's mic coming on. Well, and on that note, I think, you know, I think we can bring this to a close. There are many wise and important people on the call. So if anyone else from UNDESA, from the Secretariat wants to make a remark, now is the opportunity. Does Shengatai, did you want to add anything? And I see we also have our colleagues from New York with us. They were with us a little bit earlier on. Anything you wanted to add to the conversation? I don't see anyone raising any hands. Well, you know, on that note, I will bring this to a close. And I think what this conversation, and I think the previous one that we had on best practice forums and dynamic coalitions is making very clear for me is that we do need time just to talk about what's working, what's not working, what we can do better, and what we've achieved. I think NRIs are so busy organizing their events. They have this added pressure of trying to connect with the global IGF. There's also the outreach to best practice forums and to dynamic coalitions. And there's also just the struggle for survival, you know, the struggle of running things voluntary and coordinating people, dealing with personalities, dealing with all kinds of tensions. I think it is important for us to make time. I think the point that Marilyn made earlier about surveys or evaluations, I think understanding our metrics is also an important thing. And I'm very happy to share that next week in the series of discussions, we'll have a discussion on participation in the IGF. It will be delivered by Henri van der Spey. It's research that's being done by Research ICT Africa. And they have looked at IGF participation statistics since 2006. They've also looked at NRI participation, not to the same depth, but so next week we'll share the news with you. There will be a discussion about participation, but I think the lessons are let's analyze what we are doing. Let's look at what works and what can work better. Let's gather data, let's share the data, and let's continue this conversation. That is not about organizing our NRIs, but about our NRIs at a much more, at a level of impact and outcome. and the change that they are already creating and can continue to create in creating more inclusive and democratic, accountable internet governance everywhere. So thanks very much to everyone, and thanks a million to Anya for stepping in. I'm very sorry my connectivity is so bad. It's a mobile connection, and I think when the wind blows, the tower stops working. But thanks very much, everyone. And please, let's continue and do this again.
And thank you, Henriette, to you. The function of the MAG chair is critical for the NRI's participation in the program. I think Lynn started and left a very good legacy that you're building on, and we're very thankful that you are so dedicated and investing such strong efforts in supporting the NRIs. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anya. You are, I mean, you know, you are the one that is the real the sun that shines that keeps the NRIs strengthening. So thanks, everyone, and goodbye. And please join us again for the next discussion. Tomorrow we have a discussion on the digital roadmap, IGF Plus, and the idea of a new multi-stakeholder high-level body. And next week there will be a discussion on participation, but we'll share them with you. There'll also be a discussion next week on language and how we deal with linguistic diversity. So goodbye, everyone, and thanks very much for your time.